Welcome back to our podcast, Regulation Matters, a Clear Conversation. Once again, I'm your host, Line Dempsey. I'm currently the Chief Compliance Officer with Riccobene Associates Family Dentistry here in North Carolina and Virginia, and I'm also Clear's President for the 2022-2023 membership year. As many of you are aware, the Council on Licensure Enforcement and Regulation, or CLEAR, is an association of individuals, agencies, and organizations that comprise the international community of professional and occupational regulation. This podcast is an opportunity for you to hear about current topics in our regulatory community. And as we've done a few times in the past, this podcast is also a chance to get a sneak peek at sessions coming up at CLEAR conferences and events. We're excited to do that again today with one of our conference plenary speakers. Navigating change isn't always easy, and our guest today, Tiffany Lanier, knows this firsthand. As she grew through her own personal journey of career changes, becoming a new mom and advocating for social change, Tiffany saw firsthand what happens when the line between work and well-being is blurred and when the space necessary to navigate great seasons of change is never created. Oftentimes, it leads to burnout, bug out, and sometimes hitting what feels like rock bottom. As a former clarity strategist and coach to high performers, as one herself, Tiffany quickly realized that to create the meaningful impact we all say we want in our lives, work, and in the world, it's time to push past the old paradigm of rise and grind to step into the new paradigm of what she calls rise and shift. She has helped thousands of people all over the world rediscover who they are, what they stand for, and what matters most in times of great change. And when organizations like Capital One, United Way, or the U.S. Small Business Association are deep in a season of change, they call on her to support their people's well-being and growth. We are super excited to have Tiffany Lanier on the podcast today and looking forward to her talk at our upcoming conference.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, your session is called Own Your Shift, Turn Your Season of Change into a Season of Possibility. So tell me, Tiffany, why is this important to you?
Well, here's what we know, Line. We've heard it 1,000 times before, but the only thing that is constant in life is what? Change. That's it. That is guaranteed. Always. Every single day. That something is going to be changing, in our lives, in our work, and the world around us. And what I've found, both within myself over the years and clients and speaking to so many individuals all around the world, is this struggle that we have when we're moving through these seasons of change and how disruptive change can really be. And I saw that with myself, even at a very early age, in my teenage years, in my early 20s, that every time the wind blew slightly different, that it could cause, great mental and emotional struggle, that uncertainty, that unknown of what this change means for my life at the time caused me to go through episodes, whether it was, depressive episodes or having a lot of anxiety on what to expect and what's going to happen next. And I know firsthand just how that hinders us from creating more positive change within our lives or in our work, and how that helps us move on to greater, more possibilities. And so as I, in my mid-20s, began my own personal growth and self-awareness journey, I became the observer of myself through these seasons of change versus being the person that just let change happen to her. I began to see how I actually responded and reacted. And as I began to just really acknowledge the mental or emotional or even physical challenges that would occur through these seasons, I began to document those things. And it became this great question for me of who do we get to become, right? And how are we stepping into a new place of becoming as we grow and evolve? And how do these challenges of change really allow for us to catapult that growth? And can we look at it from that kind of lens? And so I became really obsessed with analyzing change and how we move through it.
Fantastic. Well, so what would you say are some of the changes that you may discuss in your talk that you feel maybe, us as regulators, your audience is facing, I guess, each day?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I know about, it doesn't matter which audience I'm speaking to, right? From a human to human perspective, we are navigating a lot of personal interchange, changes that we have within our relationships with friends, our home. But I know from speaking with some of the organizers of the conference that regulators in particular are faced with a lot of workforce change right now, a lot of laws that are changing constantly that creates great challenges when you're trying to do your job, right? And so misinformation, I think these are all these things that not only you might be challenged with at work, but obviously has a mental and emotional impact on you in your personal life. It's really hard to separate life and work. And so, like, what does that life work integration really look like? And how do we show up for ourselves to take some of that weight off so that as we're navigating our challenges at work, that doesn't necessarily, cross over into how we navigate it at home?
Well, I know you talk about this challenge of change, right? So what do you think is holding back people from overcoming that challenge of change, if you would?
There's so many things I think that holds us back from overcoming these challenges or the disruption that change tends to create. But a lot of the time it's our mindset, and it's the tools and resources that we have available when we're navigating. So if we have been pretty fixed, we probably, many of the listeners may have read the book Mindset that talks about fixed or growth mindsets. And a lot of the time, as we're growing up, we may be more on that fixed side, right? Where we feel that everything that is happening is happening and there's no control that I actually have over it. So it is what it's going to be, versus this more growth mindset. Okay, what can I learn or extract from this experience that may help me actually show up in a way that is more aligned with my desired outcome, whether that's in our life, our work, or in the world. And so having a different mindset helps us move through change a lot differently. And then having the tools and resources, which will be a lot of things that I may talk about in the talk, will help us be more equipped when challenge of change arise. And so having that level of toolbox and changing our mindset around change definitely helps.
Yeah, I think, oftentimes people think of change as scary, right? That it's the unknown. But, for me, it's one of those things that my parents instilled in that from day one, that the change can be good. It's exciting. It's a new adventure. So I think, I kind of always try to focus on those things, but it can be scary to make that move. Now, I guess, what is it different now when it comes to navigating change that our parents and grandparents maybe didn't necessarily face? Because, they were ones that were helping mold me at that time. But
right.
Like, how is it different now?
Like you said, change can be scary, right? The level of uncertainty of what's going to happen next. When we think about our personal lives, and what that looks like. But even when, a global pandemic just shows up at your doorstep, you're not quite ready for that. No one said next week, we're all going to shut everything down and here's how you prepare. So you're just kind of catapulted into sometimes these unexpected versions of change. But what I think, is a lot different from what our parents and grandparents even face is really how we perceive others are navigating change, because we get to actively see every single day how people are living their lives, whether it's on social media or reality TV shows. So we think that we're supposed to be doing it a certain way, or that we hear, lots of podcasts, books, we have so much information as well. And so not being able to really distill for ourselves what change not only looks like, but how we personally can navigate it, and trying to pull from everyone else's life or feel bad about maybe not being somewhere that you think you're supposed to be because other people, that comparison, right? Constantly comparing ourselves is something that our parents and grandparents definitely, maybe from, down the block, you can see, obviously you're talking, and that comparison might always be there. But think about how much we are inundated with thousands of, just pictures all day long of how other people are doing something. And so that might lend, this mindset that we don't have it together, or when change arises in our lives, it's happening far worse than it's happening to others. And so I think that ability to not be able to, we all say, well, just because it's on social media doesn't make it real, but we're still processing that imagery. And so it becomes real in our mind and in our brain because we see it as that every single day. And so really allowing ourselves to take a step back and know that everyone is going through some level of a change experience on so many different levels, that it's okay to do things differently, and it's okay to process differently. It's okay to navigate differently. And again, it comes back to knowing thyself and kind of creating that space to do the things that you need to do for you and not others.
Fantastic. I agree with that. So you kind of paired some conversations around change and well-being together. So what was, I guess, the genesis of that? Why did you decide to do that?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we all want to be well, right? And that disruption of change that we've been talking about causes us to usually have a very reactionary response to that change, which causes us to be sometimes in that like fight, flight, or freeze state of mind, right? Depending on the kind of change that is disrupting our lives. And our well-being takes a back burner. We see it all the time, just like when work gets really crazy, you're not focused so much on your health, right? Or how you stay in a state of peace or mindfulness. Like you just go with the chaos because that's what's being presented to you. And so I realized in my own personal life, what happens when when I don't take care of myself in the midst of all of these changes. Becoming a new mom or becoming a new parent is chaotic. And if you don't slow down, it'll just take over you, right? Or if you start a new job, if you are, starting a business, whatever it is, all of those things will completely consume your life. And if we don't slow down to actually acknowledge that we are human in this experience, that we are human in the midst of these great changes, and then do what's necessary, then the change becomes that much more challenging and that much more difficult. And so when I'm having conversations about change, whether it's personal change or organizational change, where does your well-being come into play? Because I feel if you were to actually take care of yourself, understand what you need, understand what your people need or your teams need as you move through this change, then we can create a pathway that has a little bit more ease and not so much stress.
Right. Well, so, as we get ready for this annual education conference, what can, the audience look forward to in your session?
Yeah, so we're going to be diving far deeper into everything that we shared a little bit here today, but really I'll be coming with the various types of frameworks that you can use that will help you move through these moments of change, whether it's the everyday transitions that we are experiencing or those really big life changes that we might see in our lives, work, or the world. But it goes back to having the tools, right? Having the proper mindset and having the tools and resources necessary for you to be able to pull on when anything and everything is thrown at you.
Excellent. Well, it's been great to get a sneak peek of your plenary session, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more in Salt Lake City. So thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me. I cannot wait to see you all in Salt Lake City.
Well, it's been our pleasure. And we really want to also continue this conversation both online as well as at the conference. So here are some questions for our listeners to think about. What changes are you or your organization facing? And are you experiencing the challenge of change? How can regulatory organizations support their people's well-being and growth during seasons of change? And what are you looking forward to learning during Tiffany's conference plenary session? We'll be posting these questions in the Clear Regulatory Network. If you haven't already joined, we invite and encourage you to join and take a part in the online discussions. And if you haven't already registered for the annual education conference, there's still time to do so now, so you can join us and Tiffany for her session and all the other great educational content and networking opportunities at our conference, September 27th through the 30th of this year in Salt Lake City. I also want to thank our listeners for tuning in for this episode. We'll be back with another episode of Regulation Matters, a Clear Conversation very soon. If you're new to the Clear podcast, please subscribe to us. You can find us on Podbean or any of your favorite podcast services. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a rating or comment in the app. Those reviews help us to improve our ranking and make it easier for new listeners to find us. Feel free also to visit our website at www.clearhq.org for additional resources, as well as a calendar of upcoming programs and events. Finally, I'd like to thank our Clear staff, specifically Stephanie Thompson. She is our content coordinator and editor for this program. Once again, I'm Lyon Dempsey, and I hope to be speaking to you again very soon.